He wasn't a criminal. He was the FBI. For years, he lived among them, trusted, unseen, until the truth surfaced.
He wore the badge. He swore the oath. But his loyalty belonged to Moscow.
The night was quiet until it wasn't. The 18th of February 2001, a frigid Sunday evening in Foxstone Park, Virginia. An unremarkable man in a dark overcoat walked across the empty footbridge carrying a plastic bag. He paused beneath the dim orange glow of a street lamp, glancing over his shoulder just once. To any passerby, it might have looked like a man taking a walk before dinner, but hidden eyes were watching federal agents positioned behind trees, camera lenses glinting in the cold. When he placed the bag beneath the wooden bridge, the command crackled through the earpiece. Now, agents surged from the darkness. The man froze, disbelief etched on his face as they surrounded him. His own agency, the FBI, was arresting him. Inside that bag were classified documents meant for his Russian handlers. The double life of Robert Hanssen, the Bureau's own mole, had finally collapsed. For 22 years, he had traded America's most guarded secrets to its greatest rival. As handcuffs closed around his wrists, one question echoed across every corridor of intelligence and betrayal alike. How did one of the FBI's most trusted men become its greatest traitor? To understand Robert Hanssen's betrayal, one must first understand the man who hid beneath the suit. Born in Chicago in 1944, Hanssen grew up under the stern hand of a father who served as a police officer, strict, sarcastic, and at times cruel. That upbringing carved in him a deep hunger for validation and control, something he would chase for the rest of his life. He wasn't the type to rebel loudly. He rebelled in silence, through secrets. In the 1,970 seconds, Hanssen joined the Chicago Police Department, assigned to a cybercrimes division long before the term became popular. He was fascinated by systems both technological and human, and by how easily they could be penetrated when no one expected it. By 1976, he entered the FBI, specializing in counterintelligence, the elite unit meant to defend America against foreign spies. Ironically, he would become exactly what he was trained to hunt. At home, Hanssen was a devout Catholic, a husband, and father of 6. Neighbors saw him as disciplined, quiet, perhaps even dull, but inside, he wrestled with a gnawing sense of invisibility passed over for promotions, unrecognized despite his intellect. To him, the Bureau seemed political, not principled, and that disillusionment festered. In 1979, something broke. Without warning, Hanssen approached the Soviet GRU, offering classified documents in exchange for money, and as he would later claim, recognition. He used aliases like Ramon Garcia, leaving dead drops under bridges and park benches, trading secrets not out of ideology, but ego. He wasn't driven by luxury or desperation. He already had a comfortable life. He was driven by the quiet thrill of power, knowing what others didn't. Over the next 2 decades, Hanssen's espionage became one of the most devastating leaks in American history. He revealed double agents, disclosed surveillance methods, and handed over thousands of top-secret pages, all while maintaining a spotless public image. To his colleagues, he was conservative, disciplined, and utterly reliable. To his Russian handlers, he was a goldmine. His genius lay in his simplicity. He never met his contacts in person. He used coded messages, concealed cash, and drop sites so ordinary that no one looked twice. For years, he operated in plain sight, a man hiding behind the authority of the badge he betrayed. And as his secrets deepened, so did his faith, a contradiction that even he could never explain. By the mid-1990 seconds, whispers began circulating through the intelligence community. Someone inside was bleeding secrets to Moscow again. The Soviets had collapsed, but Russia's new intelligence machine was still receiving startlingly precise data about U.S. operations, surveillance methods, and even double agents in the field. The losses were catastrophic. 2 American assets were executed in Moscow. Several others simply vanished. Inside the FBI, the counterintelligence division was shaken to its core. They had already suffered the embarrassment of the Aldrich Ames case, a CIA officer caught spying for the Soviets in 1994. No one wanted to believe another mole could exist, especially not within their own ranks, but the evidence said otherwise. There was someone feeding Moscow secrets so critical they could only have come from the Bureau's inner circle. For years, suspicion bounced from one name to another. Ames's betrayal had poisoned trust, and everyone looked over their shoulder. Hanssen, calm and methodical as ever, watched it all unfold from the inside, even contributing to the internal search. The irony was exquisite. He was helping hunt himself. The FBI eventually turned to technology for answers. Forensic analysts began reviewing encrypted communications, tracing unusual print logs, and examining unexplained financial transactions. Yet Hanssen's brilliance lay in his restraint. He never flaunted wealth. His payments from the KGB, estimated around $1.4 million in cash and diamonds, were hidden or unused. No luxury cars, no offshore accounts, just small inconsistencies. A tiny safe in his house, odd behavior on his work computer, a habit of moving files no one else accessed. The turning point came in 2000, when the Bureau purchased an extraordinary lead. A copy of a file stolen from Russian intelligence that included a voice recording and partial fingerprints from their inside man. The voice matched a quiet, flat American tone. The prints pointed to one name: Robert Hanssen. Realizing the magnitude of the betrayal, the FBI formed a secret internal task force to monitor him. They installed hidden cameras in his office, bugged his car, even searched his home while he was away. Agents described the process as surreal, spying on one of their own. Hanssen's paranoia began to grow. He sensed something closing in but couldn't see it. By early 2001, surveillance teams had mapped his routines precisely. They knew his drop locations, his coded language, his ritual of leaving envelopes beneath bridges wrapped in plastic. On February 18, they set the trap in Foxstone Park. He walked straight into it, calm as ever. When the agents rushed in, Hanssen's first words were almost casual. "What took you so long?" Inside his car, they found his briefcase filled with classified disks and documents labeled "Top Secret." It was the final, undeniable proof. The investigation that had haunted 2 decades of American intelligence was over, but the true damage, what he had given away, and how deeply it had changed the global intelligence balance, was still being uncovered. For the Bureau, victory tasted like ash. They hadn't just caught a spy, they had caught one of their own legends. A man who'd spent 25 years wearing the same badge, walking the same halls, shaking the same hands. And now, those hands were in chains. The courtroom was sealed tighter than any in recent memory. No cameras, no public gallery, only a handful of officials, lawyers, and family. The FBI's most humiliating betrayal was not to be televised. It was to be quietly dissected under fluorescent lights and recorded for history. Robert Hanssen entered in shackles, wearing a plain gray jumpsuit, head bowed, but posture unbroken. He didn't look like a man who'd toppled an empire's secrets. He looked like a weary accountant. But when he raised his eyes toward the prosecution table, even the agents who had arrested him felt a chill. There was no remorse, no panic, only a faint, analytical detachment, as if he were observing someone else's trial. The charges were overwhelming. 15 counts of espionage, conspiracy, and the transmission of national defense information to a foreign power. Each document he delivered, each double agent he'd exposed, was a crime that carried life, imprisonment, or worse. Prosecutors presented a devastating timeline: how Hanssen's actions had led to the execution of at least 2 U.S. informants in Moscow, how he'd compromised surveillance tunnels beneath the Russian embassy in Washington, and how his meticulous reports had dismantled some of the CIA's most valuable networks abroad. In a single binder, they said, were years of intelligence that cost billions to gather and minutes to betray. As witnesses took the stand, a portrait emerged, not of an ideologue, but of a man consumed by pride and alienation. Colleagues described him as brilliant but insufferable, rigid in principle, disdainful of superiors, and obsessed with moral purity. His defense attorneys painted him as a man at war with his own ideals, a devout Catholic who prayed daily, yet sold secrets for cash and praise from an enemy he never met. The FBI, desperate to protect classified information, struck a deal. In exchange for full cooperation and a complete confession, the prosecution agreed not to seek the death penalty. Hanssen accepted. On the 6th of July, 2001, he stood before the judge, emotionless, as he entered a guilty plea to all charges. When the verdict was delivered the following year, the courtroom fell into a heavy silence. The judge's words were measured and final. "The gravity of your crimes is almost beyond comprehension. You betrayed your country, your colleagues, and every principle you once swore to defend." The sentence, life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Hanssen nodded once. No visible reaction, no plea for forgiveness. His wife Bonnie sat motionless, her hands clasped in prayer. Their children, kept out of public view, would grow up knowing their father as a traitor, and yet, to the end, she visited him. As marshals led him away, the sound of the closing cell door echoed far beyond that sterile courtroom. It reverberated through every intelligence agency in America, a reminder that betrayal does not always come from the outside. Sometimes, it wears a suit, quotes scripture, and sits beside you in morning briefings. Hanssen was arrested by the FBI in 2001 and, in 2002, was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. He remains incarcerated in a federal supermax prison in the United States. The walls of ADX Florence, the federal supermax prison in Colorado, are built for silence. Here, Robert Hanssen spent his days in a concrete cell, 23 hours a day alone, reading theology and writing notes no one would ever see. There were no visitors, no contact with the outside world. For the Bureau, it was fitting. The man who'd lived in secrecy now lived in total isolation. Inside the FBI, his name became a ghost story. New recruits learned about Hanssen not from lectures, but from whispered warnings, how arrogance, unchecked, could rot loyalty from within. His case forced the Bureau to rebuild its internal security systems from the ground up. Background checks, financial monitoring, digital tracking, psychological evaluations, every precaution that now defines modern counterintelligence was born from his betrayal. But the damage was already done. Dozens of covert operations had been dismantled. America's trust in its own intelligence agencies had been shaken. And among the intelligence community's veterans, a single question lingered like smoke. How could one man deceive everyone for so long? In 2023, Hanssen was found dead in his cell, cause of death undisclosed, but presumed natural. He was 79 years old. Even in death, he left no confession, no apology, only a lifetime of coded letters, unanswered prayers, and a legacy of ruin. To historians, Robert Hanssen remains an enigma, a devout believer who sinned in secret, a patriot who dismantled the very system he swore to protect. To the intelligence world, he is a lesson carved in stone, that the greatest threats are not always foreign, nor loud, nor visible. Sometimes, they wear your badge, speak your language, and bow their heads beside you in prayer. As one FBI veteran later said, "We can forgive a spy, but a brother who betrays you, that wound never closes." The story of Robert Hanssen ends where it began, in the silence of loyalty broken. And in that silence, the Bureau still listens.